Welcome to the Common Man Football Show. My name is James Coburn, and today's episode, we're going to be doing NFL Week 3 metric rankings and, of course, picks. Now, the one thing I want to get you guys to understand about data work this early into the NFL season is it's a very small sample size. When I'm taking data and I'm comparing it to teams from the past, in terms of what their performances over a 16-game season was, it's not really going to get that accurate until there's a large enough sample, meaning, it's not going to be spot on, incredibly pinpoint in terms of predicting wins and other sort of things until, week 4, week 8 even. When you have a large enough sample size to kind of look and see what the positives, what the negatives are of these teams. So that's just the one thing I wanted to get out of the way, because I do know that I'm just trying to make it very clear to you guys that, what I'm basically doing is I'm taking the data each week, updating it, and presenting it based on the same methodology that has worked for winning football teams in the past. And the fundamentals are simply this: if you score more points on offense, if you have a defense that prevents scores from happening, if you prevent sacks from happening, if you get sacks, if you get turnovers, it's basic football stuff. And it's just looking at how these teams performed over the last 2 weeks and then trying to come to, the games this week and seeing, okay, this is how they performed in the last 2 weeks, and now these teams are playing each other matchup-wise, and let's look at what the individual matchups are. So with this week in particular, at least starting with the power rankings, this is basically how the power rankings kind of shape up right now, and I'm going to leave terms in the description so that you know what all these sort of numbers and other dials are. But this is basically the ranking. So this is the teams that have done the best when it comes to their offensive/defensive split percentages in terms of their ability to create first downs or prevent first downs on defense and offense. It looks at turnover percentage, so the number of turnovers that they create on offense and defense. So basically when it comes to TO percentage, that's talking about offenses. So offenses that have more turnovers are going to score less in that particular metric. Sack percentage, of course, the more sacks that team takes, the lower that number is going to be. Then, of course, you have OSC, which is the offensive score percentage, which is, how many drives equal offensive scoring. And then you can look at the rest, but some of the other stuff is just special teams data as well, field goal percentage, extra point percentage, punting average, stuff like that. But so far, these are the top teams through 2 weeks, based on all that data. The Detroit Lions are number 1. They've had a very good start to their season, performed pretty well against Arizona Cardinals, and also beat up on the New York Giants. Both those teams, though, are not the best. Those are, I would say strength of schedule does kind of cloud things for the Lions, but they have performed well overall. When you look at their overall data points, they have a defense that creates turnovers. They pretty good at preventing sacks, and they have a pretty good offense in terms of their ability to score on almost every drive. So that's why they're number 1. Of course, any of the Denver Broncos, who took down the Dallas Cowboys, so that kind of bumped them up a bit. Some areas of concerns: a very high amount of turnovers compared to the rest of the NFL. They have a turnover percentage of 16.69 so far through 2 weeks. That can't stay that way if they want to continue to win more football games in the future. So that's one area of concern. They also have a fairly high sack percentage. 9.76 is their overall sack percentage score. So they're not very good in terms of preventing sacks, which is another sort of thing to worry about, something to kind of rectify. So that definitely is sort of an area of concern. And then defensively, they've not really created as many turnovers as other teams in the NFL up to this point, nor they've actually created as many sacks as other teams in the NFL. But the rest of their stuff is, solid. The Carolina Panthers, of course, number 3, followed by the Baltimore Ravens. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, of course, that's only 1 week of data for them, but they did perform well enough in that first meeting to do that. Of course, Pittsburgh Steelers, Kansas City Chiefs, Atlanta Falcons. The Rams are still there, surprisingly, but they still, some of this is because of that week 1 performance, buying into things, but the data still kind of favors them despite their loss to the Washington Redskins. The Philadelphia Eagles, of course, are there. The Miami Dolphins are there. And, of course, the Oakland Raiders. The only thing that really holds the Oakland Raiders back is that defense. The offense is by far the best. I mean, the offense is pretty much arguably the best offense in the NFL when it comes to just their ability to create first downs and also their ability to score on every drive that they get onto the field. They're pretty much number 1 in the NFL when it comes to their offense scoring on every drive. Compared to the rest of the NFL. So that's them, but their defense has just not performed well. It didn't perform well against Tennessee, 100%, and it didn't really perform as well against the Jets as it probably should have. And again, this is just based on how they performed. They didn't really prevent a lot of scores on defense compared to the rest of the NFL. They didn't really, I understand that they won and the defense did make plays here and there, but I'm just giving you some awesome some basics in terms of what's holding them back data wise. And then of course you have the rest of the data here. So that's all that kind of stuff. So now we get to the picks of the week for week 3. So this is the whole enchilada score. I don't know what I'm going to call it, but this is just basically the score that takes into account all the variables that I talked to you about that are relevant to winning football games based on a sample from 1998 to 2016. It's only 2 weeks worth of data, so again, it's very limited sample size, but this is how the data is stacking up with things right now. And again, as the season goes on, this is going to become as the sample gets bigger, things are going to be, you're going to see some stuff, So, but yeah, so with the pick'ems. The data favors the Los Angeles Rams over the San Francisco 49ers. The data, of course, favors the Ravens over the Jaguars, Steelers over the Bears, Broncos over the Bills. The Carolina Panthers are favored to beat the Saints by a pretty sizable margin. The Buccaneers are favored over the Vikings, although, again, that Buccaneers is only 1 week worth of data, so keep that in mind. The Cleveland Browns are favored over the Colts, which, honestly, based on what I've seen of the Colts and also the Browns, that's kind of a 50-50. To me, it's kind of a 50-50 because of how bad both those teams have played. And also because Jacoby Brissett did show some things, at least against the Arizona team. The Miami Dolphins over the Jets. The Patriots over the Texans. Then, of course, it has the Lions over the Falcons. Now, this is another one of those where my head's telling me the data may be wrong because, again, I think the Lions have had a very favorable 2 games. But this will be a pretty big test and a pretty big prove-it type of game for the Lions, versus the Falcons. So the data favors, again, based on how the Lions have played in the last 2 weeks, it favors the Lions in this matchup. But this could easily be the Falcons winning this as well, based on the fact that just the the Lions played kind of a weaker schedule the first 2 weeks. Then, of course, we have the Eagles versus the Giants. Eagles win over the Giants. The Giants have just not performed well in the last 2 weeks, which is kind of what I'm talking about when it comes to strength schedule. Seahawks over the Titans, very tight data-wise in that particular matchup. The Chiefs over the Chargers. The Packers over the Bengals. Packers really took a stumble after their week 2 performance. The Raiders over the Redskins, and then, of course, the Cowboys over the Cardinals. So these are the picks for this week based on the data, based on 2 weeks worth of data. Again, this is not the most predictive thing ever. However, this is something to, as the weeks go on, as more data comes in, you'll get kind of a better perspective in terms of why this data matters, why turnovers matter, why sacks matter, and all that kind of stuff. So again, my name is James Coburn. You can find my work at draftcoburn.wordpress.com. You can also follow me on Twitter at Geometrics. And if you like this content and you want more content like this, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. Share this video as well if anybody that you know, and I'll talk to you guys in the next video. Peace.